How's it quickly?
How's it, Sean? Stop. If you want to stop video on your side, okay, that's better. Okay, and we're good to go. Here we are back in Dickie Fritz, Wednesday as usual. Thanks everyone for joining. We've got a couple of things the usual things to go through, and then a couple of interesting talks, and then we're going to do a rundown on the early days, the 1980s and 90s in Margate, one of EAA's heydays. We used to get 400 aeroplanes that would fly in. And we've got a great selection of photographs sent in by Roy Watson, Don Ilsley, Archie Kemp, Carl, and various others. And we'll leave a couple of the mics open for Derek and a couple of the guys that were there at that time, and they can chirp a little. Okay, cool. Right, let's get going. Okay, guys, there's the QR code. If you guys want to scan it for the Mach numbers this month, I'll leave that QR code on us during the presentation. You can just scan it, and you'll automatically update your scores. Okay. Oh, why doesn't my screen want to move? Okay. Okay, so welcome to our EAA Chapter 3 to 2 June Zoom gathering. Thanks all for attending. There's Carl Suter. Thank you, Carl. And here we are in the Dickie Fritz Hall as usual, Wednesday night. Welcome. Got new members. We've got a couple of new members there. Michael Mole, I think, Sean, you mentioned, joined this week. Give a wave. I know your video's off. Visitors, special guest. We've got Arnie all the way from Chicago. Hi, Arnie. Thank you for joining us all the way from there. Not sure if there's anyone else. I just scroll through here during the meeting. And then all the current members, thank you very much for being with us once again. I see Michael Wright from East London there. Hi, Michael. How's it going? You want to switch off your video, Mike? Just to save our bandwidth here. Okay.
May I say something, please? You've got Russell Knowles is a newie here. He's a J on the side there, and about to join EAA 322. Russell Knowles was head of training at SAA, and he flies a Comanche, which lives at Jumps at Springs. Hello, Russ.
Okay. Thank you for that, Carl, and welcome, Russ. Good to have you with us as well. Okay, so we've got a few birthdays there.
Neil, please add Maurie's name to the birthday list.
Sorry?
Maurie's name must add to the birthday list.
Okay, when is your birthday, Maurie?
The 10th.
10th. Okay, this I got from Mark. So maybe Maurie's got a habit of taking herself off these things. Happy birthday, Maurie, for the 10th. And who else? We've got Keaton, Rob Yonkers. Who else is there? Eugene. So if you guys want to get a free beer, you just have to lean on those guys when you go to the bar, because they'll be buying you beers. Thank you, guys. Previous minutes were emailed. We just need a proposer and a seconder. Anyone?
Paul's happy to propose.
Thank you, Carl. Seconder. Anyone there? I'll second it. Okay, and then EAA National, just congratulations to the new committee and well done. We must just say thank you to the guys, the outgoing guys, Sean, for doing such a great job the last year. And the new committee, David Turner. David, all again. Brad Stevenson has joined as assistant treasurer. That's a big help for Mark. Thank you, Brad, for doing that. And Secretary Maurie Reddy. Thanks, Maurie, from Teacher 2 for doing that. Okay, and then congratulations to the following members who've gone supersonic in our Mach scheme. That's 1.2 Mach. Then you get supersonic status. And we got Conan, Mr. and Mark Kluler. For you. Thank you. Well done, guys. If you guys want to just go onto the Mach thing and check your points, it's all up and running. The system seems to be working nicely, and I see a lot of you are getting active in different things and are scoring lots of points. So well done to all those who've contributed, and keep it up. Thank you. Okay, future events. Young Eagles, I don't think that'll happen because of the shutdown, still the lockdown. And then just don't forget, we've got our EAA convention and Sun and Fun planned for September. Hopefully we're all back to normal by then. And that'll be a problem. Just also the next meeting is going to be 1st of July, the next chapter meeting, virtual or real. Okay, and then we're going to go, Carl is going to give us a little safety talk. If you can share screen there, Carl, and go into it. Thank you. Carl?
Muted, and there we go. Wait, it says I'm muted. Right. Look, can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can hear you.
Right. I'd just like to say that there was this tragic accident. I don't know the details, but of a chap called Todd at Botsfontein, who's started his microlight, or he couldn't start it, and when it started, it ran over him, the prop hit him, and he died. That's as I understand. This is something that is just so prevalent, and I'm sure that every single person listening in here can tell us a story about props. I'll just name a few, and I'll just show you this video in a second. We had an HS-748 at the Vomit Comet at SAA, and Tony Snellgar pulled off with this thing before the guy had got out the way with the chock. It cut his head off and it lay on the ground. It was one of the most gruesome things I've ever seen. In 1963, when I was at Drakensberg Gardens, there was a fellow called John Chilwell, J.K. Chilwell. He wrote a magazine, Wings Over Africa. And I was flying a tripacer, and the battery was flat. And he came along, and I asked him if he'd swing it. He said, with pleasure. And he went along and he grabbed the prop. The mags were off, the key was out, but he grabbed the propeller, and it came down and it hit him in the middle of his head, just on a compression. And there was John Chilwell lying on the ground. Now we're 158 miles from Durban, and we had to take that guy in a car, and he got to Maritzburg Hospital, but he was okay. But they had to sew up his head, but it actually cracked his skull as well. That's on compression. That's myself at Wonderboom. I tried to start a cub that was in 1963, beginning of 63, and I had set the thing, what I thought was the mags were off, and I swung the prop and it started, and the throttle was wide open, and this thing took off, and I grabbed it by the strut, and it did circles around me. And Schalk Barnard, who was the ATC there at Wonderboom at the time, he came charging out, and he managed to jump in and to risk his own life to close the throttle. Anyway, I learned from that. A dear friend of ours, of all of ours, was Noel Otten, lying under his pit special on a trolley, and the prop was too close to him, and he moved the prop, and the engine started. That was so close. So we must all learn from these things. Now, these pictures that I've got here are from, which I use for the police training, and telling them to stay away from propellers and be aware of them. If there's a rotating beacon going, and it doesn't only go about airplanes, it goes about, well, helicopters, if you could put them in that category, Eugene, and also drones. So just have a look. Here's a couple of things. When the rotating beacon is going, or the flashing beacon, it means in a commercial airplane that the engines are running or are about to run, and you don't approach that airplane. And have a look at this. It starts off with an airplane or a 747 with a mechanic, and just watch how this is gruesome, but we'll just go through it quickly, and away we go. Slideshow from the beginning. Okay. Right, now, is it running? Yeah. See the engine run? Oh, God. Did you see this guy walk into the airplane?
No, we didn't see it from the beginning.
Right. Can I go back there? All right, let's go to the next one. Watch this guy. Right, that was with the beacon light going, and the technician walked past the front of the engine, and he came out the back in a red mist. Now watch this. This guy here interferes. You see the guy with the orange hazard vest? Okay, now, all right, okay.
We didn't see the first one properly, Carl.
All right, I can do that thing again, okay. Now, share screen. Share. Right, now it's going to start from the beginning. Can you hear me talking now? And now just watch where the arrow is pointing at the propeller, and this guy goes along mooching around where what he shouldn't be doing, or nobody has warned him. Watch. Amen.
Failure.
Wait, magnificent failure. Wait, there, try again. No, not working. All right, let's go. Sorry. I'm sorry about that. That's the best I could do. You didn't see that first one.
No, we didn't see it. It started halfway through.
Oh, damn. I'm sorry, but that fellow walked into the screen, at least into that propeller, and it caught him on the shoulder, nearly chopped his head off. But I guess that would have taken his clavicle and the whole, you know, paralyzed the guy for very seriously. Okay.
Thanks, Carl.
Oh, sorry about that, Neil. Neil, I don't know how to unshare now.
Okay. You done?
Neil will just open his app and it will take yours off the screen, Carl.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Carl. And then Carl, do you just want to introduce Rob on the next topic?
Okay, I need my screen on, please, Maury.
Stop share. Okay, share your screen, Carl.
Right, now I need to turn my video on, please. Okay, I can't see you guys because I've just got blank in front of me, but just let me just say this is a tribute to dear Rob Jonkers. A few of us can visualize the amount of work and stress that Rob Jonkers and those associated with him had to go through to achieve a very small concession to allow us to at least fly our ATF or C of A equipped aircraft to try and combat unnecessary degradation of the engines. Congratulations and heartfelt thanks to all involved. Many of us, myself included, believe that our right to freedom of flight is assured by membership of EAA and EAA's affiliation to Aero Club, our mouthpiece at CAA. This does not happen automatically. It takes the dedication and fortitude of those at the helm of EAA, and especially at Aero Club in recent years. Aero Club was in a precarious position amongst recreational flyers for many reasons, and Rob has prevailed at this monumentally rigid and difficult time and is achieving much while also experiencing serious issues in his professional life. Thank you, Rob, and may there be many more successes in the ongoing negotiations on our behalf with CAA and in your business life.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you everybody for also taking part in what we are trying to achieve. This has not only
if someone can hear me, sorry about that, Rob. We are seeing the wrong thing altogether on the screens. We are seeing at the moment Irene's screen. Can someone fix that, please?
Okay, Neil will have to fix that. I'm not sharing anything as yet. I'll share something just now.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's not only call it myself that is behind everything. I've got at least a good team behind me. Our new Vice Chairman Martinez Potgieter is also very much call it involved. We have the the ladies at the Aero Club in CASA who are involved. So distribute to them also, and of course a lot of the other team members at CASA, people like Kevin Story, Leon Dillman, and of course at the CAA. Without them, we would not have progressed very much at this point. Yeah, so maybe just a quick update on where we are with matters. I did at the last meeting discuss what we had proposed to the Department of Transport and to the CAA, that we were proposing that under level 3 that we would be free to fly, but that has unfortunately not happened. The Department of Transport last week, put in a bid that is more cautious than what we wanted, primarily because the necessary protocols in the recreational aviation was not easy to achieve, where things like airlines and airports and so on could put in call it quite extensive measures to combat call it the virus protocols. Yeah, but the plan is not to just roll over and die. I did put in the meeting with the DG that we had last Wednesday. I said, we've had the concession to do maintenance flights, but we're now in the realm of proficiencies, becoming rusty, and it would be good if we had some concession on having the ability to do proficiency flights. So he promised to take that away and communicate back via the CAA on this. I have, in fact, a meeting in an hour's time with the CAA, where we are going to discuss this point and see if there is some way of getting some concession to be able to get airborne from a proficiency point of view, and on other things. As you know, training can now take place with ATOs, because they can be assessed for being compliant, and as long as the ATOs can demonstrate compliance, there are 2 pieces of paper, an appendix to the general notice that they need to complete. And I've also just been reminded there's a NOTAM that was published on Monday morning. And if you are an ATO, each instructor needs to have, call it approval, or at least some sort of document that says they can fly, to do instruction, to do skills tests. I think that's basically where we are on on getting us to fly. We don't know what will happen in level 2 as yet. Level 3 is going to be unlocked in a few phases, and maybe we are lucky that in some phases of level 3 we can still get something to be done. All right, those of you who've at least heard of the maintenance flight scheme that we have, I'm not sure if all of you have seen it, but I just thought maybe I'll just quickly share you the process to follow if you want to do a continued airworthiness flight. You can see my screen now. You can either go to the Aero Club or the CASA, it's the Commercial Aviation Association of South Africa, their website. The 2 websites in terms of content are identical in terms of this page. So there's a bar here called maintenance related flights, and it gives you the process to follow on what to do. There's also a user manual, as it appears that not everybody seems to be reading this manual on what to exactly do. So there's a lot of failures we get on the website. So it's important that you read through this properly and also read the manual. Then also on this website is the engine preservation protocol. Because the maintenance preservation is related to engine, the engines that need to be exercised, we spent a lot of time with all our Aero Club sections who are call it engine experts, to prepare protocols for every engine type that we have in our aircraft. Of course, with type certified, it's very easy. It's mainly Continental like Cummins, but for us home builds, it's quite a vast range. So we prepared protocols for every engine type there will be, and that is what gets uploaded to the application. The application is found via that link, and this is what the application looks like. It's very simple. This was developed fairly quickly. Over a period of about 4 days, we had this application running, and all you do is you register. There's a registration screen that's not on here at the moment. Once you're registered, you can then add an aircraft. You may have more than one aircraft. It's registration, type, engine, and where it's located. And then once you can apply for a flight with each one of your aircraft, you can select the drop-down list which one you want to fly, and then it goes through an approval process. So this is what the approval process looks like. These are current pending aircraft that either the Aero Club or the CASA ladies, they do all the vetting of the documents that are uploaded. And if there are problems with those documents, they get rejected and they are referred back. So you'll see why it's been rejected. A lot of times it is the documents are not properly uploaded, or there's missing documents. And once that is being sorted out, it will go through to the CAA for approval. So the CAA has essentially approved all of the ones that were put up today have been approved except for these two, which is probably new ones. And then you'll see a list of approved by the CAA and not started, and who are currently flying, who have completed their flights, and who are not approved, because there are certain aircraft not approved, mostly because they've already received their permits from, call it the previous CAA. And that's basically what I can give as an overview. Those of you who haven't taken advantage of this yet, please do. You get 7 days worth of window to fly, and then this kind of flight can be done every 28 days. Is there any questions?
Rob, it's Ethel.
Yes, Ethel.
Just remember, I think we all need to remember the High Court case yesterday is going to run 14 days. And I do expect that if the government doesn't appeal the judge's judgment, which I read today, and it's absolutely scathing, we'll go down to lockdown level 2 pretty quickly. I think that's likely to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll have to see how it goes, but we've got 14 days, you know, that we can still do stuff. Or maybe there's other imperatives that happen. As you know, every day is a new day. Things change, you know, quite dramatically, quite quickly. Okay, that's.
Jean-Pierre has got his hand up, Rob. I'm not sure if you want to take a question quickly.
Yeah, I can take a question. I can't see any hands. Jean-Pierre?
Yes, my hand is up. Yes, thank you. Can you read me?
Yes, I can hear you, Jean-Pierre.
Thank you. Have you had a guarantee from the CAA that the special regulations put in place because of the pandemic are there only on a temporary basis and will be removed as soon as we go progressively to the end of the lockdown?
Yes.
Or even before?
Yeah, you will see that all the engine protocols that we've written up are an advisory protocol only. We want to make sure that the wording of that was that you will not be held to any of this in the future.
What I'm mainly concerned about is flight plans that are forced to be filed, and I'm quite worried.
Yeah, the flight plans. Yeah, flight plans are temporary because of the issue of ATNS needing to know where everybody is in this lockdown period. That's the only reason why.
Is that due to heavy traffic, or is it simply because of the lockdown?
It's just purely because of the lockdown, because of the state of disaster means that the Air Force, in fact, owns the airspace and they need to know where everybody is.
Okay, thank you very much. You've answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Rob, yes, Pierre Dupinard.
Hello, Pierre.
Rob, when do you activate the flight? I've now got my permission to fly the Piper Cub. At what stage do you do the activation? Ahead of time, or right at the moment when you know you're going to be able to fly and you've started?
Yeah, you can do it already at home, you know, an hour or two before you fly, and then you can close you can end your flight when you get back home. I know it's quite difficult to operate this application on your cell phone. I know that iPhones work, but not Android. So you can start your flight before you leave home in the morning, and when you get home in the afternoon, you can end your flight. It's not we call it very time sensitive, but people are looking at that you should actually end your flight. We have a lot of people who start their flights but never end them, so we have to force them to end them.
No, the question with me is I have to hand start the Piper Cub. If it doesn't want to start on the day, then I've wasted my slot. Is that true?
Yes, you have wasted it, but then we just reset it. I have had a lot of people with those kind of issues where they couldn't fly on the day because the weather was bad, or some other guys couldn't get into their hangar at Rand Airport. So we just reset the flight and we start again. So it's not a big issue.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
Hi, this is Kenneth here. I just
Hello,
want to
Kenneth.
thank everybody. Hi, how's it going? Thank you very much. I was able to successfully do the flight with Bonanza, and the best thing is to phone ATNS. They're very helpful. So I just spoke with them once I had the approval, and they were very helpful. So just don't be scared to phone the guys. They're very helpful.
Yeah. So you can file a flight plan if you wanted to fly outside the boundaries of your airfield. You can file a flight plan either on File to Fly if you are familiar with that, or as Kenneth just said, you can phone ATNS and they will for sure help you. They are not very busy, so they also need to keep their proficiency going.
Yes, so I was able to just phone them and file on the telephone. And so don't be scared to call them, people. They're very helpful.
Okay, if that's all, we can then continue. Just moving on to the next presenter, who is going to be Michael Boer. Michael Boer is somebody I know for a very long time. He's one of the senior lecturers at the University of Witwatersrand. I've known him in the time as part of my tenure at the Aeronautical Society. So he does all the aeronautical option subjects at the university, and has been there, probably forever. So Michael, you're going to do your presentation. It looks interesting on some technical aspects. You can carry on.
Thanks, Rob. Has the screen come through?
Yeah, we got the screen, Michael. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So good evening. As Rob said, a lecturer at Wits University. We've basically only lost 1 week worth of teaching with the lockdown. We've gone from being a paper-based university to being completely online. So today I've put a couple of some scary, some easy to understand, and some difficult words on the screen. And basically the plan is to sort of work through them. I've put together three short topics to talk about. The first is aircraft acceleration, and then the difference in speed, and also how you would calculate best climb angle and best climb rate. And I've got an example of how this is not very well explained in the literature, and they certainly don't use graphs to explain it, both in the engineering sense and in pilot training. And hopefully at the end of this short talk, you'll be able to understand the difference between force, power, energy, and specific excess power, and we'll be using a light aircraft as the example. The first thing that we need to cover is a little bit of terminology. And obviously, when it comes to airplanes, we talk about speed going from static on the left and higher speed is on the right. All of the speed graphs are done that way. But in aeronautical engineering, the basic convention is that slow is on the right and fast is on the left. So the word terminology is mirrored to crack a joke about this. We've got an aeroplane. We've also got an airfoil. An airfoil is just a slice of the wing. What's important to note is that we've got a reference line, which is known as the angle of attack. And today we focused on this blue, the blue arrow, the blue vector. It's known as velocity. And just in terms of some basic understanding, drag is always defined as being parallel to this velocity, and lift is always at 90 degrees to it. So even when the aircraft is going straight up, lift is at 90 degrees. It's out sideways, parallel to the surface of the Earth. In terms of what an airplane would look like, we've obviously got the velocity, which would be measured by the airspeed instruments. We've got the angle of attack, which is reference to one specific section of the wing. And then we've got drag, parallel, and lift as perpendicular to it. And obviously this can be made as complicated as you like. The aircraft pictured, the Piaggio Avanti, we would have to factor in the canards, the ventral fins, and the horizontal tail. Just in terms of taking everybody back to what they didn't pay attention to in high school, on the top right we've got two graphs. The left one in green is in basically all the books about flying. It would be the lift coefficient against angle of attack. And the important points that we're going to focus on is stall, we're flying really slow, that sits over here. And the red dot is, for today, is going to be focused on minimums and maximums. So in this particular case, cruise speed would be denoted C. It would sit somewhere over here on a drag curve. It would sit somewhere here at a cruise angle of attack. And with some magic wizardry, we could plot that coefficient against the drag coefficient. This particular curve is called a drag polar, and that gives us the aircraft drag curve. And what's interesting is there's only one kind of vehicle which has a curve which gets less and then it increases again, and that's obviously an aeroplane. Formula One cars have got something fairly similar to this. And just a reminder that drag is made up of the induced drag, which decays with velocity, and then we've got parasite drag, which is the thing which cyclists and motor vehicles fight with. In terms of physics, we have got velocity as a single V. When it comes to drag, it is velocity times velocity. So what happens is if we double the velocity, the drag goes up by 2 squared. So it goes up to 4 times. And then power is a force times the velocity. And because drag is made up of V squared, power is a function of V times V times V, or V cubed. In terms of what we're going to be covering today, just a reminder of what the aeroplane looks like. We've plotted a thrust curve in black, and we've got the drag curve in gold or yellow. And this is for a standard high-wing aeroplane, 550 kilos with 100 horsepower Rotax. And we're just going to run through the high school maths very, very quickly. We remember that Newton said that mass times acceleration is a force. We know that acceleration is a change in velocity over time. We're now going to focus on what happens along the flight path. And the force, this force over here on an aeroplane, is the thrust force minus the drag force. And this is where we need to use sort of split vision, because thrust sits up here, and at this velocity here of 50 knots, our drag force is quite small compared to the thrust force. So obviously we've got quite a large actual force. We can also substitute in this velocity, change velocity over time, and we can create an equation where the force is the thrust minus the drag of the aeroplane. We factor in the mass of the aeroplane, and we have got this change in velocity. We also need to remember that power is a force, but it's the thrust minus the drag force multiplied by velocity. And what's interesting is the maximum speed of the aeroplane, which is where thrust is equal to drag, the power is actually 0. And we'll cover that in the next few slides. In terms of using the real aircraft, it's important that we try and understand what happens with a force, and we'll be getting to best climb angle first. So we've got the same thrust curve, we've got the same drag curve, and if we were to plot the thrust force minus the drag force, we'll find that the maximum force sits at 50 knots. But our best glide ratio, or best aerodynamic efficiency, actually sits at 55 knots for this particular aeroplane. And we can actually use this force and Newton's second law to do a little bit of aircraft performance. If we keep the same background, so we've got the same thrust force, we've got the same drag force, we've plotted F in blue, so the maximum force sits over here, but I've actually gone and plotted in green the maximum acceleration. And this basically proves that the aircraft acceleration is maximum at 50 knots, and it decays all the way to 0 at maximum speed. And what's important is things like rates of acceleration. So when you're on this side of peak acceleration, your rate of speed increases, and then it sort of takes forever to accelerate down to your maximum speed. And that's important for the next slide. These aircraft were all designed, okay, obviously the P-51 wasn't, but once you got into the Korean than the Vietnam and the current fighters, the concept of power as opposed to energy was used to factor in or to influence the design. The guy behind this was Colonel Boyd. He was a Sabre driver in Korea. He then flew the Super Sabre. And what's important is that he's the father of energy maneuverability theory, which is effectively clever maths. He was just a self-taught engineer, and this theory comes from thermodynamics more than anything else. For those of you that are interested, there's the OODA loop theory, which is what the Marine Corps uses their ultimate sort of combat tactic. And then he authored a very interesting paper, which is all about creative design, known as the destruction creation loop. And we'll be talking about what specific excess power means. The equation is relatively simple. So it's got three words in it: specific, which means per unit mass. We've got excess, surplus, and then we've got the word power. And the word power means a force multiplied by a velocity. But this is actually two powers. There's the thrust power, which is thrust multiplied by velocity, and then we obviously would subtract the drag power, which is a negative power. We also need to bear in mind that the actual equation for power is a force times velocity, and the units for that would be a joule. However, the units for this specific excess power, if we multiply it out, it actually gives us a speed, a velocity. And in SI units, it's meters per second, and in aircraft units, we would generally use feet per minute. And the interesting thing is it's per unit mass. So if you burn fuel during flight, your specific excess power actually increases. And what's important is that this velocity can be negative, 0, or positive. And all I've done is I've kept the same graph. So we've got the best L over D at 55 knots. We've got the maximum acceleration and the maximum force at 50 knots. But when we calculate the purple line, we'll actually see that our maximum power, specific power, is actually at 75 knots. And this difference is pretty interesting. And we have to remember that force is not a power, which is explained on this next graph. So up until now, you probably all lost. Let's bring it all home. At 50 knots, we know that maximum force gives us maximum acceleration. So if you sit with a stopwatch and you measure, your aircraft will be at maximum acceleration at 50 knots. However, when we get to maximum speed, we know that there's no more force left because thrust is equal to drag, and there's no acceleration. We also know that from kinetic energy, that is our point of maximum energy, but it's also where no acceleration can occur. And it actually means that the maximum speed is the point where the actual power of the aircraft is 0 in terms of maneuvering power. This maximum specific excess power is actually the energy level. And for this particular aircraft, it's just over 1,000 feet per minute. Now let's run through one quick example to see if we can understand this. We are going to try and model acceleration without changing altitude. So for this particular case, the equation is written here: thrust minus drag, velocity over mass. And we're going to accelerate this light aircraft from 50 to 60 knots, and we're going to apply the specific excess power to the velocity. The picture over here explains what we're doing. We're going to take the velocity, and we're basically going to use the specific excess power in the direction of the velocity. The equation is simple, and it comes from Newton's laws. The time is the initial velocity multiplied by the change in velocity divided by 9.81, the gravitational constant on Earth, and then we have the specific excess power, but it is averaged. So from the graph on the previous page, we're going to accelerate from 50 knots to 60 knots. We calculate the specific excess power at 50 and at 60, and we know that this is the average. All we end up doing is multiplying out. I've put the conversion factor down here. And for this aircraft, it takes 2.84 seconds to accelerate from 50 to 60 knots without changing altitude. We can also work out that the angle of attack changes from 10.8 to 7.5. And the reason that we teach students how to do this is while you are accelerating, you can work out how much distance is covered and how much fuel is used. Now, that was a simple example. We're now going to try and understand exactly what the specific excess power means. And if we remember back, the maximum force was at 50 knots. and the best climb angle is calculated at the maximum force. In this case, it ends up being about 10 degrees, the climb angle. What's interesting is the maximum specific excess power is at 75 knots, and that's actually the best climb rate, just over 1,000 feet per minute. But it happens at a completely different climb angle. It happens about 2 degrees lower than the best climb angle, and the climb rate goes from 850 feet per minute to just under 1,100. And that's the interesting thing. What we need to try and understand is that the aircraft speed is this arrow. The specific excess power when we're climbing at constant speed, which is basically what climb is applied in the vertical direction. And we can just use trigonometry because both of these are velocities. We can use trigonometry to work out the angle. We're now going to try a climb. And what we're going to do is we're going to climb at 50 knots over a 500 feet change in altitude. So we're going to apply the specific excess power in the vertical direction only. Now that time equation is simple. It's going to be the change in altitude divided by this average specific excess power. And what I've done is I've plotted the climb rate or specific excess power, which is exactly the same thing, at 0, 500 feet, and 1,000 feet. And I've written the two numbers here. So when we work this out, if we were to climb at 50 knots, it would take just under 35 seconds to climb the 500 feet. And obviously this is with no acceleration involved, which means a pretty well-maintained climb. Lastly, we're going to cover what happens if you climb while accelerating. And you can obviously model all kinds of maneuvers like this. So for this particular example, we're going to climb at 400 feet per minute at 50 knots. So we're basically going to be applying the specific excess power to the vertical velocity. And what we need to do is, in this particular case, we would actually do the acceleration. Lost my place here for a second. Okay, so 930 feet per minute is the specific excess power that is available. But if we want to climb at 400 feet per minute, we just deduct it because it's a bit like money. You can split your bets. And what that does is it leaves 537 feet per minute for acceleration. So we would start at 50 knots. We want to accelerate to 60 knots while climbing at 400 feet per minute. The balance will be used to change our velocity. The maths is fairly simple. 50 knots, our original speed, we multiply by the change in speed of 10 knots, and we then have to deduct the 400 feet per minute that we're going to use to climb from the total available, which is 937. And that takes us just under 5 seconds to accelerate while climbing. Once we have attained the 60 knots, we're now going to convert all of that specific excess power into climb rate. So we started out here, we then accelerated to 60 knots. It took 4.95 seconds. We can actually work out that we covered 33 feet in altitude and we climbed at a climb angle of 4.1 degrees. If we now turn that climb into a constant velocity climb, we would then be able to climb at an average of between 1,006 and 993. Our climb rate would be 1,000 feet per minute. And what we would then do is we would cover the change in height, which would be the 500 feet less the 33 feet already covered. And that would allow us, we can calculate that at being 28 degrees. So what we ended up doing is we went from 50 knots to 60 knots at a climb angle of just over 4 degrees. We climbed at 400 feet per minute while accelerating using the balance of the specific excess power. Once we reached 60 knots, we then climbed at 60 knots. Our climb rate was then 1,000 feet per minute, and our climb angle was 9.5 degrees. We can also work out what happened to the angle of attack during this. So during the acceleration, we went from 10.8 degrees to 7.5 degrees. That's angle of attack. The climb angle change was from 4.1 to 9.5. So we can actually plot what this would be in the sky. Now, the reason that the angle of attack is important is while doing acceleration in an aircraft that is, say, badly trimmed, doing this kind of analysis allows you to work out how rapidly you might need to adjust. We're at the back end of the presentation, so it's been really quick. I try to keep it as short as possible. In summary, specific excess power is a mass-based energy level. It's used for the design or influencing the design of all modern aircraft are done using it. It can be negative, positive, or zero. So if you are flying along and your engine fails, you're in a negative state, and that would either be your rate of descent or your rate of acceleration, or both. So we can analyze this in reverse. And it can be used for combination maneuvers as well, and zoom maneuvers. So if we summarize what we did, if we did level acceleration, it took us just under 3 seconds to go from 50 to 60 knots for this light aircraft. If we climbed an increment of 500 feet at a constant speed of 50 knots, which was our best climb angle, it would take just under 35 seconds. If we did a combination climb, so we climbed at a rate of 400 feet per minute while accelerating, that would take 5 seconds. And then the balance of the climb would take 28.2. Our 35-second climb would come down to 33 seconds. And if we just climbed the 500 feet increment at our best climb speed of 75 knots, the climb would take just over 28 seconds. It can be used for glides and dives and for engine out. I've put on one thing which I did for an RV crash a few years ago. And this is load factor. So most pilots will have seen what's known as a VN diagram. This is a VN diagram with an interesting background. So it's got the equivalent airspeed, and we've got load factor. I then plotted stall line as the red line, and the backdrop, I've put the full power specific excess power lines. So maximum speed would sit somewhere over here, and I've then plotted the turn rate. And obviously the turn rate would steepen up the more G you pull. And I've also plotted the turn radius. So what this would do is if you were flying at full power and you were say at maximum speed and you pulled all the way up to 2G, this would basically give us that the turn rate would be about 12 degrees per second. The turn radius would probably be around 375 meters, and our SEP would be negative. And most of you as pilots will know this. If you were at maximum speed and then you started to maneuver without losing altitude, you'd be forced to slow down. And that's basically my story. I'm not sure if there'd be any questions.
Oh, thanks, Michael. If any questions, just please use the raise your hand feature. If anyone's got anything there. Chat. Okay, guys. No questions. I don't see any. Maury, are you seeing any raise your hands on your side then?
No, nobody is asking questions, Neil. No
Cool.
raised hands and no unmuted mics.
Great. Well, Michael, thanks very much. It was very interesting. Quite an in-depth look there. And I hope we can all understand that. Thank you for making it pretty clear to us. Thank you. Okay, guys. Next thing we've got. Let me just share screen. Thanks, Michael. That's your talk done. If anyone's got any questions, I can always email Michael. Send me send me an email, and I'll pass it on to Michael, and we can sort out any queries like that. Thank you. Okay, guys, and the last thing we've got tonight is just to look at EAA during the 80s and 90s. I've put together a slideshow, and it's just a random slideshow. I haven't put anything in order or anything. I would like to have a couple of mics live that we could have Derek, Cole, Ethel, John Eilsley, maybe Dave Lister, if you want Dave Lister, you were around in those days, And who else did we have? And Archie. Archie, if you can be there. Okay.
If we can just ask them to unmute their mics.
Yeah, okay. So Derek, can you unmute? Ethel?
Yes.
Can you unmute? John
Yes.
Eilsley? Can you unmute? Carl Jensen?
Down there.
Okay. Archie, can you unmute? Arch?
Here we go.
Done.
Okay. Cool. And then we just run through. If you guys can just, you know, maybe you remember a particular aeroplane or a story about the aeroplane during the presentation. Nothing on this has been rehearsed, anything. So let's just sit back and have some fun with early days of art. Sorry.
Let's have the slideshow. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, this is done by Carl. A quick slideshow on some of the things.
Classy, eh? This is only 2.5 minutes, people. That's Fluff McKercher, scruffy fluffy. Look at that, all black. Now it's all white. I must tell you, watching this here, although it's a little bit jerky, that these pictures come from calendars that Archie Kemp gave me, asked me to record quite a while ago, from 1983 to 1987. I flew this particular airplane, which is the one that crashed at Brits, that Long Easy.
That was a very different.
Hey, check this out. Look at that young Archie and Pam and Bobby. Well, they're the names. Well done, Archie.
Okay, well done, Carl. Great. Great video.
Thanks, Carl.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's go to some of the pictures.
Down and watch.
So you guys, just give me a second. It's jammed on maybe here. There we go. Okay. So some of these pictures. Oh, Roy Watson. Can we also unmute Roy there as well? This photo here was sent in from Roy. Are you there, Roy?
While you're battling to get Roy on, do you know that the ultimate airplane count was in 1987, and that was by Dave Becker, who was absolutely fanatic about recording things, that there were 540 airplanes of different registrations at Margate in 1987. That was the ultimate visit to Margate.
Amazing. Just one story on Dave there, Carl. He used to arrive at the air show with that little trolley of his and his camera equipment, And he used to cruise around the airfield with his notebook, jotting down every registration, taking a picture of every plane meticulously. And he came to Oshkosh the one year, and off he went into onto the flight line. At the end of the day, I walked back to the campsite, and as I walked past the medical tent, I saw this guy in a drip, and I thought, that looks just like Dave. I went in there, and they said, no, he's on a drip. He's totally exhausted. He tried to do his 530 airplane stunt with 12,000 airplanes in Oshkosh on the first day, and the poor guy ended up on a drip, suffering from exhaustion.
He was an absolute legend, and what a wonderful keeper of records and history. And you know, John Ilsley appears to be taking that place, and which is really terrific.
Yeah, no, great. Agree with you, John. Just up in the corner there, this is where I think one of the second Margate, the house up in the corner there that you see, I think that was Dave Smith's house. He moved up from Queenstown, and he bought that property right on the airfield to be close to the convention every year. Okay, Arch, you there?
Yeah. I'm here, but I can't unmute my video. I mean, can't get my video.
Roy, you there? Can you see the screen?
Yes, I've got the screen, but it says you cannot start your video because your host has stopped.
No, you don't have to start your video. You just have to talk. We're looking at pictures. Okay. That drag and repeat.
John English. John English.
Yeah. And I think Roy's got an interesting story on the registration of that thing and problem with at the convention.
I was on the first Margate when he was there. His registration was not adequately sized, and they grounded the aircraft, and then they had to put tape on and whatnot to fly it back. CIA said that's grounded registration too small.
So we didn't only have a problem with CIA nowadays, that was DCA in those days. That also gave us a lot of
yes,
work.
DCA.
Yeah, cool. For me, that's an iconic Margate airplane. The first Margate I went down to, we landed at Harrismith because of bad weather, and there were the kills in that beautiful Oyster of theirs. And
Is Derek unmuted?
Bill Keel. That's Bill Keel's aeroplane. Bill and Nigel Keel built that thing.
Correct. Well, yeah, Nigel in the Oyster. I think it had a Lycoming engine in that as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now they brought that airplane from Rhodesia, and you remember, well, at a meeting a long time ago, Bill was telling us, Nigel, that they found a sloughed python skin inside the airplane, but they stuck it together with packing tape because there was no duct tape in those days. And they saw this massive sloughed snakeskin. And they looked up in the rafters, and there was this snake in the rafters in Bill's shed at Buccleuch, you know, dobing him out.
Right.
Yeah, both the Oyster and the Repeat, of course, are now owned by Mark Sard in Queenstown. And
I was wondering I was wondering where that Oyster was now.
Yeah, no, it's part of Mark Sard's wings collection in Queenstown, and he's put it back in the Southern Rhodesian Air Force markings, but it's still got the same engine that Bill Keel fitted. Originally, of course, it would have had a Cirrus Minor in it, but Mark's retained the Lycoming that's in it.
Okay, thanks, John. Next one. This must have been taken at the Fairy Glen Hotel, I think it was, where they had the prize giving. You can see Bob Ewing, who was one of the most amazing people in EAA we've ever had, presenting the Man of the Year award to Archie, and that's all Archie's clan on the side there. Donovan, you can see him in the background. Archie there.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. When was that? About 83, I think. 82.
Probably about 83.
Yeah, cool. Natalie and John. This was a picture Archie sent to me that Bob Ewing handing over the committee. In there you can see Dave Fraser, Ian Harvey, Archie, and Neddy. Neddy unfortunately died in the Hansi Cronje incident. He was co-pilot in that aeroplane. But I just wish we had a picture of him and all his regalia. He used to do the plane marshalling at Margate, and he had all the badges and everything, and he looked typically early Margate. Anyone got any comments there? So I think that was all the VW powered aeroplanes. We used to put them in one section. You can see Derek's teeny. I think that was Peter Hentz, KR. Derek, are you there? Derek? Okay. Couple of KRs. That was the day of the time of the KRs.
The VP1 in there as well with an enclosed cockpit.
Sorry, what was that, John?
The VP1 with an enclosed cockpit right in the middle.
VP1, yeah. Yes.
Neil, can you? Neil, I'm muted.
No, you're not. We can hear you. Talk.
Can you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There's some very interesting aeroplanes here. Right at the top, there's a Turbulent. That's Hookie Baldwin from PE. The VP is a Ralph Burnham's from Utenag. He and Hookie shared hangars together at Utenag. Then there's the Teeny. And yeah, I think Dale de Klerk has got the plane, the red one on the top. Cool.
Yes, I think that's the Krugersdorp now. Yeah, there's both the yellow and the blue.
I think.
Yeah.
And the high wing, I think that's an aircraft that Hookie Baldwin also built.
Okay, well, wasn't that the Termite?
It's a Termite, yeah.
That's a Smith Termite, Neil. That is correct.
Termite, yeah. He sold it to I forget his name now, but he lived in Belcom and he used to come to all the shows. Yeah, meetings.
We're in the bog roll cutting competition always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That Termite eventually belonged to Otto Stumke, who lives near Paris.
Okay.
Lotto Otto.
Cool. I like those decent socks there. That was just the general view of the apron. Is that you, Hoppy?
That's Nigel.
Okay.
So this one was this is in the 90s when Nigel went to Margate with it for the first time.
Cool. That's the one that Dale landed on the top of the Mercedes Benz.
I think that's me. It could be me, but I actually think it's Nigel.
Okay. Cool.
It is you, because in the background there's Roy Watson's Tiger, and we hadn't covered it yet.
Okay, yeah. I was very much thinner then.
Some early photos. That's Brian Nelson's Patanavio, or RSA 200. One of our past presidents, Brian Nelson. He's got a lot of Air Force attendants at Margate those early days. So I think this was Scully. Archie, these are Archie's pictures, and it was probably Middleburg man flying stunt. Archie there?
Was that?
That was one of his crazy man shows.
Yeah, I think this was the first year after they unbanned air shows because of the fuel crisis, and we had it at Middleburg.
Archie, is that the first or second Margate?
Eric, I think this was actually Middleburg.
Middleburg. Yeah. No, it doesn't look like Margate.
No. No, I think it's Middleburg, yeah. The ambulance in the background there chasing around.
That was the Middleburg airstrip in the town, not the where it is now.
I think it was the opening of that new airstrip. They opened it and they had this big air show to celebrate the opening of it. And that was landing on the truck with, what was his name, the racing driver?
Bobby Althoff.
Bobby
Althoff.
Yes.
That's Zingy Harrison's pup, which also went with Evelyn when it was sold and it went to Texas. And I actually made a couple of bits on this thing because we had a cottage next door to Zingy's place when this thing was being built by Zingy and Daryl Mann. Wow, wonderful picture.
It's hanging in an airport now somewhere, isn't it, Carl?
No, it's in Austin in Texas, and it's in a museum. It's not being flown anymore.
Yeah, but isn't it hanging in an airport, in an airport building?
Not sure. Don't know about that.
I think it is. I'll find that out.
There's a model of that Sopwith pup. It's about a 2-meter wingspan or 2.5 meters. It's a massive thing that's hanging in the Margate Light Plane Club, which Auntie Zilla, Zingy's widow, gave to me. And I've never had the transport to get the thing back up here. And when I was down there with the safety aviator set up, I see it's deteriorating quite tremendously, but quite a historic model, but real museum quality thing. Anyway, that's it.
Can I comment on that UFI next to this little termite?
Yes, Flybaby.
That's right, yeah. It's a Bowers Flybaby built by Tony Wills in Pietermaritzburg in the 60s. He built it in his first floor flat in the lounge. And actually, this picture we've got, because we bought it from him through Cyril Manser, who's now passed away. He gave us pictures of where they took it out of the flat and lowered it down to the ground floor, and then took it off to the airfield to put the wings on and the engine in it. And we then we had it in the early 2000s, and we restored it, put an 0200 engine in it, and then sold it on to a guy called Claude Pullen, and I believe it's now Petite. It's a lovely little aeroplane. Flew quite a lot in that aeroplane.
Cool. Thanks, Paul.
Does anybody perhaps know who owns UFI? I do have somebody that's trying to find it. If they do, won't they please let me know?
Maury, I've got his details. I just can't remember his name now. Hell of a nice guy. And John Miller and I did an article. John did the pictures and I wrote the article on 2 of them, UFI and the one that Renata Reeve built in the 2000s as well. And yeah, I'll find out for you.
Thanks, Paul.
I think that was the DCA Beaver that, what is his name, he used to fly down there?
Arthur Thomas.
Arthur Thomas, yeah.
Oh, yeah, and then eventually it was Ray Pike who used to push it around and wear 4 bars at Margate. Shame. This pup, incidentally, that its registration was ZS Pup, and that was a present from Mike van Ginkel, or Mike and Jeanette van Ginkel, to Zingy when the thing was being built, to have a personalized registration. Nice. It had a Warner Scarab engine in it, and the engine came from an old guy, or from a guy at Verenigen, who had a Fairchild, just like this 24R that's showing here, but the one with the radial engine like Chalky used, and that was the same engine that they put in the pup.
Sorry. I'm sorry, I don't think they can hear me, and I don't know what to do, so.
Well, we can hear you, Arch. We can hear you. Arch, you can talk.
I didn't know you could hear.
Yeah.
I thought I got switched off.
Go ahead, Arch. No. You still there?
Yeah, I'm watching. I'm busy
Okay,
watching.
Okay, cool. That Fairchild there, BAK at the end of that thing. If you look on your screen, quite a famous Fairchild at that time.
Neil, are you still there? I don't think we can hear you any longer.
Okay, can you hear me now? I'm muted.
Yes, great. Sorry,
Yeah.
it's just great. We
Okay.
seem to lose signal.
Okay, yeah, maybe it's out. Yeah. So I think that's a Thorpe T19 or whatever it is down at the bottom, in the front there. Anyone there?
We can hear you.
It's a lovely scene.
That's with Peter Hengst's aircraft standing there.
Okay, Dave Fraser.
With two visitors from Oshkosh.
Just as a matter of interest, it's
Yeah,
Affle.
I wondered who they were.
Just as a matter of interest, my first visit to Margate was with Peter Hengst in this very airplane. It was an Aztec.
That's one of There's Peter's Booker.
Which was fully restored, if I remember correctly, by Tim Keaton, and didn't Chalky have a hand in it as well?
Yeah, very much so. And with Chalky helping to restore that, Peter Hengst gave him enough money to pay the deposit for the kit of his RV6, which now belongs to Horace Block, which Chalky flew to Oshkosh and back. So there.
You know, I remember this airplane that was built by Pete Lears.
Yes, it was. And the young boy with the skateboard there is his son, who's now the CEO of First National Bank.
That aircraft was built by Peter at Stelle as his first attempt to try and get into the aircraft.
Yes, it was called a Sally Eagle. It was a very similar to a Cessna 185. And that's Jacques Soliers at the back, who's now the CEO of First National Bank, also a pilot and a current aviator.
This airplane here was a 185 copy that he made out of glass. Peter Solier made out of glass fiber and other stuff, not quite the high tech here, to assist the Air Force in replacing the 185s, which were obviously getting hurt in the problem times.
The general view.
Wow.
So those are the planes we used to get, where we used to get the Vampire and the freezer stores and all the Air Force stuff in there. And I think that is Chalky's Fairchild in front of the Vampire there.
Yeah. WWO. Yeah, dead right. And then on the right-hand side of the picture is a rare thing there. That's a jeepers. That belonged to. No, on the very right-hand side there, the high wing, which was an Auster that Picky Rotenbach used in the big floods that they had down the coast there, and that was the only airplane that could land on the roads, and it was rear loading, so it was quite a dramatic effort by Picky Rotenbach, also known as Picky Rottenberger, but he was a nice guy. He's a wonderful chap, actually.
Just on the Fairchild there, just for everybody's sake, Chalky flew that Fairchild with Peter Hengst all the way to Oshkosh as well.
And that Dornier Park, there's Lima uniform, which used to belong to Davy Villa at the time from Nelspruit.
Okay, that's Lulu, which
That's
eventually,
correct.
yeah.
It went off to, he sold it to Tom Berge down in Heckwood, and then Tom then sold it on, well, after he passed away, I think Tracy sold it to, I think Rodney Ben's got it now.
Yeah, and Tracy Robb also owned Lulu for a while.
Correct, yeah.
Tom left it to you, Tracy.
RC3 CB. Yeah, that belonged to Mark French. When I was at Picky, I saw this thing at the Pretoria Industrial Exhibition in 1955. And eventually Mark French bought it, and the Avix Air and Mark French restored it. And he eventually crashed this airplane or the airplane crashed at Boomy Hills on Lake Kariba.
Negative, it wasn't Boomy Hills, it was the Kariba Dam Airfield.
Okay, it's all,
and the reason for it was that it had a fuel bladder in the aeroplane, and the fuel bladder had the pump too had a leak in it. They put the bungs in before they refueled because they were going to land back on the lake, and they folded and folded and folded, and it ran into the fuselage. And on takeoff, and Mark didn't realize from the fuel slip that he had put in so much fuel. Had he looked at the fuel slip, he would have known there was something wrong, because it just cannot hold the amount of fuel they put in. So it was horribly overloaded, and they eventually crashed into wires taking off from Kariba. They couldn't get down to the lake.
Okay, it had a 220 horsepower Franklin engine in it, and Mark French's wife was Glyn, who was a friend of Bill Keels, and I met her with the Van Ginkels. And Glyn French was actually a chairman of EAA 322 at one stage.
Carl, that's absolutely right. And the sad part about it is all the water tests on this aeroplane were done at our cottage on the Vaal Dam. At that stage, we had, well, it wasn't really a cottage, it's more like a shack. And we even had a runway there. And at one time, we actually had 13 airplanes on the runway parked at our shack at the Vaal Dam. But what really happened here, and it has been partly explained, Mike Honey was the actual pilot who was flying it. Mark was in the plane, of course, and there was a couple from, I think it was British Caledonian Airlines, who were not allowed to come to South Africa, so they were in Zimbabwe. And Mike Honey was a King Air pilot, and the three of them went into the terminal building to buy Cokes or whatever, and Mike Honey was left to fill the aeroplane up with avgas. And that's where as explained, the bladder, which was in the belly of the CB, broke, and all the fuel flooded. And of course, when they rotated, all the fuel went to the tail.
Yeah, but it flew into the hill, eh? Next to...
No, it went into blue gum trees at the end of the runway.
Okay. All right. Wow. Dramatic. Oh, nice, this first-class information.
The guy that was in he was a couple. I seem to recall they owned a museum, an aircraft museum in the UK, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. When this aeroplane was displayed at the Pretoria Industrial Exhibition, it was a sort of a goldy and a dark blue color. I was about 4 years old at that stage. And Piet van der Woude imported this airplane, and they took it to Hartbeespoort Dam, and they tried to get airborne there, and it wouldn't get airborne. So they packed it up and they took it down to Vaal Dam, and they couldn't get airborne there. And then eventually the airplane was lying derelict, and Mark French actually got hold of it And with the Harrison family, they restored it, and it actually flew a couple of times quite well, and then this tragedy at the end.
It was in the back of a hangar at Grand Central for many, many years.
Yeah.
Sorry, if anybody else would like to continue commenting, Neil has just lost connection. He's just reconnecting, so the slideshow will stay as it is at the moment, but please continue your discussion.
Next.
A bit of a sad story on this, because Glyn, they were at Boomy Hills, and I was supposed to go on the trip with them, but for whatever reason, I think business at the time, I couldn't go. And Glyn stayed behind at Boomy Hills when the other four went off to the Kariba Dam runway, or because they went to go and fill it up. And that's when the problem happened. But when it was in Margate, I actually was fortunate to photograph it from my Cessna 172, landing on the estuary that's at the Wild Coast Sun now, where they landed on the water there. And it was actually spectacular, some of those pictures that we managed to get in that time. I'm just sorry I don't have them anymore.
Alan, you had a couple of comments earlier that you were messaging about. Would you like to share that?
I don't know how relevant it is without having the photograph in front, but one of them was of a Piper Vagabond that had been rebuilt by a guy called Joe Hyam. And he had told a whole lot of people that he wanted to always land on the Linksfield Golf Course. And coming back from Margate in 1982, he said he ran out of fuel, couldn't make Grand Central, and landed on the Linksfield Golf Course. Now, he put some fuel in it and took off the next day, and the winds were really poorly. And sadly, he crashed into the trees at the end of the golf fairway there and killed himself in it. And a bit of a black taint on the whole convention. There was speculation that he always wanted to do that, so he engineered the fuel leak.
Now, Archie will fill you in on that. Archie knew there was a fuel problem. The fuel didn't want to drain down from the top tank into the bottom tank. And in fact, it was that year, many of us that flew back from Margate spent the night in Ladysmith. Sorry, yeah, in Ladysmith. Because the winds were so strong. The winds were so strong, and Archie and Joe Hyam and another airplane, I think it was Ian Harvey, they managed to sneak across the mountain. And they had to land at Koortplay Power Station and swap fuel. And anyway, it then started getting dark, and that's how Joe Hyam ended up at the golf course. Because he wanted to, it was close to home, so he could walk home. But yeah, very, very tragic. And in fact, there were a few of us that said to him, pull the wings off, take the airplane to Grand Central. But the next morning, he took off into towards the trees. But when he hit the top of the trees, he had a terrible tailwind, stalled it and went into the trees. Very tragic.
That was when the guy with the beaver, I forget, Arthur Thomas, I think it was, took off because the weather was so bad. And I think, Derek, you turned around. You'd already got.
Yeah, I took off and headed off, and
yeah.
crossing the pass. The winds were so strong that I watched the Pantechnicon going up the pass. It went under my wing and out the front, and the Teeny could do 120 knots. So you know how strong the wing was. And Arthur, when I went back, Arthur Thomas took off in the Beaver, and we went in and had a cup, but he came out and you could still see the Beaver.
Yeah, and then he actually said he'd keep in radio contact and tell us how much wind was blowing and stuff like that.
It was phenomenally strong. But many of us spent the night in Ladysmith that night.
Just talking on that, Derek, I remember I was at like a 120-hour pilot then, and I was going to take off. And you came back and landed, and you said it took you like 30 minutes to get there and 10 minutes back. And you said to me, my 2,000 hours tells me you don't fly in these conditions. And thank you.
Never known the wind to be so strong across the berg. Yeah. Many good stories of trying to get home.
I was a passenger with Tom Berge in a Cherokee 140, and a guy on a bicycle was actually going faster than we were.
Yeah. Can't believe it.
Neil, I don't know if you can hear me.
Somebody fix a screen now. It's got a white thing in front of me. Maria, please.
The screen.
Yeah, I'm seeing the slideshow.
Is the slideshow still on?
No, the slideshow is not, Neil. Would you maybe
Isn't
just
it?
refresh? But what it does when the slideshow is off is that as a person speaks, it puts their name on the screen. So you might see that. And Archie, we can hear you 5-5.
Oh, thank you. I thought I'm mute over here.
Let me just try and sort this out just
Now,
so, guys.
Joe Heim at the time was the secretary of 322 and was on his way back. What really happened, that little plane was built down in Durban, and the fuel pipeline was a very narrow. It was only 316 ID. And what happened, as soon as he climbed up high with that cold wind that we had, the fuel actually froze, and he had an engine out. As he went down, he quickly saw the engine started when he was quite low level again, and he landed actually 3 times on the way down. They landed on a farm strip, and Donovan and I followed in, and also Chris Kroll and them in their little plane. We helped him, checked him, he had fuel. So he took off again, and then they landed at Grootfontein because of the late timing. And I flew back with Donovan in the Taylorcraft BLD and got to Grand Central just before dusk. Ian Harvey also in his Stinson. Most of the people turned back or stopped, but the wind was the worst we've ever known on a trip like that.
Archie, what is interesting is it was Bobby Holcroft with Chris Kroll, who also had the same aircraft, the Vagabond.
Correct.
And if you remember, and I was actually flying this even before I had a pilot's license with Bobby Holcroft in the Vagabond when we came into land at Margate and come land back on 04, and Crash Flash Barnett was in the Spitfire, and one of the ATCs had lined up a KR2 to take off, and all hell broke loose on the RT because Bobby said to me, "This guy's lost his temper in the Spitfire and there's going to be a crash." And what happened is we landed, and while the plane was still rolling out, and it just stopped, Bobby and I climbed out as quickly as we could, and I looked at my camera, and I only had 3 frames left, film in those days, ran past the fire engine, said, "Get your engine started, there's going to be a crash." And that's exactly what Barnett did. He bounced it and put it on its nose, and we all saw the results. I actually still have those pictures with me.
Now, there was a chap, Luli, that used to fly it normally, and that bloke who flew it owned the plane but had very little time in the thing. But when that hit the ground and the prop shattered, Pam's actually still got a piece of that propeller she keeps in her handbag right up to now.
That's amazing. And I remember running up to the Spitfire where it went off the runway towards the crowd and then stopped on its nose. And Larry Barnett's daughter ran up and, said, "Dad, you're okay, you're okay." And we all sort of arrived there together. And she said, "Look, we'll fix the Spitty, but we'll just get somebody younger to fly it."
Yeah.
But if you've got that picture, there's a picture of me running from the Zlin, because I just landed the Zlin or taxied the Zlin or whatever it was, running towards the where the Spitfire was praying.
Yeah, I've actually got quite a few photos. We just got to find them when I looked in more boxes. and it was the wrong thing to go ploughing with.
Neil, going back to the Rapide, that picture of the Rapide, the history of that aeroplane is it was in the Seychelles, and John English wanted a Rapide, and he found this aeroplane there, and it was flying around the islands. And John got hold of a guy called John Volken, a tailor who owned it, and the two of them flew that aeroplane from the Seychelles back to Progress in Port Elizabeth. And then John eventually got it flying, or got rated on it. And that aeroplane did eventually, it came from Nairobi. It flew around Nairobi for many, many years, doing charters, in fact, scheduled for, it wasn't Kenyan Airlines, it was I think Central African Airlines it flew for. And hence the name on it, the Queen. And John stopped flying it, and it was very much derelict for many years in his hangar, and I think also at the Air Force hangar in Port Elizabeth. And then it was sold to Mark Said, who got it to East London, and they rebuilt it there, but it also had a mishap on its first flight after that, where it ended up on its nose. And then eventually Flippy from Ireland went down and flew it the next flight. And I think, and the General's also flown it. Brian has flown it. In fact, he flew up for the One Rand air show, but it's very much in good hands now and looking stunningly beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautifully restored.
Yeah, but yeah, it's been in the country a long, long time. Yeah. And in fact, John and I, many years ago, when it arrived here, the two of us sat in the aeroplane, and I learned to fly at Progress in 74, and I think that airplane arrived in 75. And we were sitting in it and taxiing it around, and it got airborne on us. But yeah, another story. But,
Courtney flew in it as a passenger when he was
one of the
about
most beautiful restorations in the country.
Oh, lovely. Just on, can I just chip in here? It's Carl. Got a message here from Keaton that airplane that I spoke about, that Picky Rottenbach flew, was a Percival EP9, which was rear loading, and that Sopwith Pup of Zingi's is hanging in the Dallas Airport terminal.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right. And there's a guy, Dr. Frank Persson, you might know, guys might know him, the Super Cub IOU. His dad flew that pistol.
Wow. Okay.
There's a nice story there. I think his dad owned it, in fact. But I'll get the story from Frank Persson.
Okay. Yeah, Frank, I don't know if Frank would know, but he's a good guy. Yep. That's stable flight getting out of the Archie's airplane, Brian Stableford, out of the 195.
He's probably just cucked all over Archie for 3 hours.
Yeah, heavily.
Yeah.
Is that the day he became Stumblefoot?
Nothing like being panel beaten by the General.
Right, next. There we are.
Is that Roy?
That's Charles Davidson. Charles Davidson.
Okay. Okay, Roy.
You can see he can probably sing with those, with legs like that. You know, knees. Oh, gee, thin legs, sing like a canary.
Charles was an instructor, also American ALTP license.
By the way, at the back there on the left of the screen was that Harvard, which was called the Fish Eagle, which the Air Force, yeah, there we go, which was built by the museum people out of bits and pieces of Harvards. And that was the Concours d'Elegance Harvard at the time, but there are many more that have taken its place. But that Harvard was actually ground looped about a year ago at Swartkops, and damaged.
I think that was Fani's Jodel there.
JM.
Yeah.
Beautiful pictures. Hey, look at that, the Rattlestar Galactica.
Is that
Bob Ewing,
Bobby's?
Staggerwing.
Yeah.
That's the one Bob Ewing
Bob
had.
Ewing was flying the Staggerwing.
Brian Wallace was actually flying the Ju-52 in this picture.
That was Mike Spencer's Chippy.
Oh,
that
danger.
was the Air Force.
What nice aircraft are those in the background?
Oh, look, there's Frelons. My
Was
word.
that at Margate?
I don't know.
Maybe those are Sikorsky's.
Look at that undercarriage.
Sure. No, those are Frelons.
Is that Freelon at Margate?
No ways. No
I
ways.
think that's from somewhere else, yeah.
It
In
is
fact, there's a
definitely a
lovely
Sikorsky.
story from Margate of a guy with his KR that landed on the beach, and the Super Freelon went out to go and fetch him and brought him and the whole airplane back. Remember that call?
Remember that,
Archie?
yeah.
Is it finished? No.
Wasn't that King, Don King? What's his name? Whose pits is that? Can anyone remember?
That was original Noel Otten's. That's why it's NJO.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well done, Roy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's
was
Gordon
Gordon's.
Henderson's Long Easy.
Yeah,
That's
Gordon
one of
Henderson.
the Durban ones. Huh?
Yeah,
Henderson.
Gordon Henderson.
Ian Henderson, yeah.
Gordon
Those are
Henderson.
very nice.
He was also a
Yeah.
racing driver. And by the way, Gordon Henderson also owned ZS DOS, which is a 182, which Moose and Ernie Alexander own now. He was the original owner. Oh,
You
wow.
can guess whose one that is.
Yeah, Mr. Ura.
That's Peter Cilliers.
Oh, okay, Archie.
I think that was the first two-seater in the country.
Anyone, any idea whose that was?
No.
Yeah,
Yes, this is UTB. It was owned by, it was imported by Peter Cilliers, and it was then later sold to John Van Dane, who scribbled, it was a 70-hour PPL, who then scribbled it at Baragwanath, and it was then rebuilt by Placo in Duva colors, and then became the Duva pits for quite a while. I can't remember who John has sold it on to.
UTB is now sitting in the States, and it's by, was it Ben that owns it?
Ben Mayer.
Oh, yes, Ben Mayer.
No, he owned it, yeah. He took that and a beautifully restored S1S at the same time, and his Super Cub JOC.
Ben Mayer.
That Super Cub he took to America was the one that Hal Lunt brought from Madagascar. It was a French Air Force Super Cub, and he eventually sold it to Jimmy Popham, and Jimmy sold it to Ben. Ben took it to America with him.
I think this was a radial engine formation that they put up at Margate the 1 year.
Correct.
There it is.
It's probably taken from the 195. That's why we're not in the picture. That's the
Yeah,
river.
Art, you can see your wing on the right top hand side of the screen here.
That's the river where the CB landed. That was mentioned earlier.
Mzimvubu.
Yeah, Archie, thank you for that. That is, in fact, exactly where the CB landed.
Yeah.
It was flown there by Ziggy Harrison's son when he landed on the river.
That's Tony Smith on the right.
Harrison. Yeah.
That's Tony Smith coming in on the right there.
And he still looks that good today.
Then we used to get jets, Mirages at Margate as well.
It was the Air Force visit which couldn't obviously land there, so he done the fly past and then went back to the main airport.
There's our Grumman. So Stuart and myself had that Grumman formation team with one or two other Grummans. We used to put those horrible stickers on all our photographs in those days. So excuse that. Mine was the red one, and this was Stuart Woods'. Stuart Woods, a past president. The blue one.
That airplane of yours, Neil, is still flying around. Eh?
I believe it's at Rand in that AFOS.
Yeah, I saw it the other day.
India X-ray Lima.
Yeah, still around.
It's in AFOS's hangar at Rand. You're quite right.
All
If
paint
you
white.
just look,
On the right-hand side, you can see the tail of Dave Fraser's Comanche there, I think. Yeah.
that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
There's a Spitfire after it crashed at Margate.
Properly.
That's after they put it back on its wheels.
Yeah. So anyone brave enough to fly a thing like that down to Margate deserves 100 medals, I think.
That's it. I think Tosh's termite from Utenag.
With the biplane.
Yeah, it's a termite, but it's built by a guy called Tosh. And it was called Tosh's termite.
Okay.
How it ever got to Margate, I don't know, because it wasn't all that well built.
And it was a VW.
No, it had a Continental in it.
Okay.
Behind it is this Lynn, which I think Rocket Runner's got at the moment.
Wasn't that Frank Wilson's Lynn?
No, it's the one that I rebuilt.
I think that was Giederberg owned it then. There.
Yeah, well, he was a partner. I rebuilt it. It's Uniform Lima Alpha.
Oh.
And there was another two of our past presidents. It was
Mark
Piet van Dwerf and Martin.
No, Martin Clark.
Martin Clark, yeah. Yeah.
Martin,
Chris van Dwerf is RSA 200.
Yeah. Zulu Sierra FSH Fish.
Yeah, Fish.
Yeah, yeah. It's owned now by Piet Skutter at across the road from Krugersdorp there now.
Yeah. That was at the old Lanceria, huh?
Yeah.
Before Lanceria was revamped.
Okay. Rotenbach.
Another one of Rotenbach's. That's
the
sister of the one that's in Krugersdorp now. Luton Beaton, huh? Luton Beaton.
You can see the amount of aircraft through the back of the picture. Pity it was blurred.
They're both there, Derek. I think they're both in the hangar. Which one, Arch?
I say you can see a lot of planes behind. It's a pity it was blurred.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. I think that was your picture, Archie.
Yeah.
You should have put it in focus, man.
That's it.
I think that tiger behind was Good Evans, Pat Evans' tiger.
There's the sister, built by the Reichenbach family. Both of them were built at Virginia.
That cassette now belongs to, or it's in the hangar at Fly-In, belongs to Johan Meyren, or he has possession of it.
The red and the yellow one belongs to the Snyder's brothers in Brits.
Yes, correct. But they owned both of them. Eh? There were two of them built in Durban.
Correct. This was the two. All the two was in Brits.
Stableford. Yeah, Stableford in a breezy, but it was called a Fin de Merwe. And do you remember the guy that owned it was Finn, who
Mickey
was
Finn.
the guy from
Mickey
Penguin
Finn.
Pool.
It was Mickey Finn.
Mickey Finn. He was the owner of Penguin Pools. Huh?
Yeah,
that's right. And he was involved with Grand Central when Grand Central moved from a private ownership to individual.
And he also had an Era Commander, an A model Era Commander. I flew it, and Stableford, look at that youthful vigor.
And I was very lucky to fly in one of these at Oshkosh.
Yeah.
It was sold to Durban, and he then flew. I forget the guy's name. He flew it to the EAA we had in the Free State at the dam. And on the way back, he hit wires and killed himself. And that's it. Ended up in a ball.
Oh dear.
His son is. We've seen him a few times at Oshkosh. I forget his name. Anybody remember his name?
It's quite a legendary design, that. Oof, Gregory.
But that's a very recent photo, that of Gregory, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. That's a good lad, that Greg.
That's Tracy Robb's EAA biplane, I think it is.
Wow.
It's a curry watt.
Curry watt, okay.
Yeah.
I believe that Tracy might have bought that aeroplane back.
She has. I think she's got it, yeah.
Yes, I think she has.
Nice.
I remember seeing Tracy get out of that airplane at Margate and saying, someone just buy this airplane. I don't want to have it ever again. I don't want to sit in turbulence. It's like that all the way from Joburg.
It was the one that chewed up Dave's long easy.
That's correct.
Quite right, Derek.
That used to be a Piper Colt, and it was made into tail dragger. It's got flaps, and it's now called
Coho.
No, man.
Coho built that.
Yeah, belongs to. I know one of the guys is Clever Trevor, who owns it. Oh wow.
That's a Flybaby Renata Reef.
Okay.
I did an article on this aeroplane for SA Flyer for John Miller. I've still got it. I must actually give it to you. It was an insert into the magazine on this one and UFI.
Wow, that's pretty.
What was her name? What was her name flying it?
Renata Reeve.
Renata, that's it.
She was an AP. She actually got her AP rating on this, building this aeroplane, and then my boot did the engine for her up front. It was a 235, I think it was, yeah.
Oh, but she flew that aeroplane all over the show.
She did, yeah.
And she also had a beaten pole.
Correct.
With
then
flowers.
She got pregnant, and that was the end of the aeroplane.
No, this thing's still flying. It's around somewhere. I don't know where it is. I saw a video of it in a hangar the other day.
That Brackpan.
That's correct. Yeah.
Was that airplane Peter Harbour?
I'm not.
Didn't Peter Harbour build that airplane?
The airplane looks anorexic.
It does.
It looks like we've lost Neil again.
Okay.
Am I there, guys?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay.
Anybody remember the name of that aeroplane?
Internet connection.
That's correct. It's a silhouette.
Well done, Keaton. Next. Hey.
That's owned now by the Prattleys. Used to be Brian Gruer.
Okay. Wow. Is that a koala?
No.
That's a Crutchley special, wasn't it? Or wasn't it?
The Crutchley special. The Crutchley
it's his
special.
second home build. His own design. Crutchley Skydance, I think.
Sure. Not easy on the eye.
Definitely not a kit book.
Yeah. That was Alan's aeroplane, wasn't it? Alan Bowden, my cousin.
Didn't it? Which was the one that belonged to your family, Neil?
I think this was it, yeah. Alan's
Is
one.
that
It used to belong to Heath. What was his name? John Heath.
John Heath.
I think so. It was John Heath's aeroplane. And Alan bought it from him.
Alan, yeah.
And then Chris van Hoof also owned it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
At Margate.
Yeah. Victor Oscar.
But that's late in Margate. When was the first Margate? Was it 82?
Chucky and Peter Hengst and Maureen.
Maureen, all the way.
Which one? This is
Maureen is the one.
This is Oshkosh.
Oshkosh 92.
That was when they did the fair trial there.
They flew it there at 65 miles an hour, all that way, which is about the same speed as the freighter that brought it back in a box.
But it spent a long time in Oshkosh before it came
And
back.
EAA made them pay the entrance fee when they landed there as well to get into the
See, I remember Maureen had a shirt that said, "I don't know where Chalky is."
But that was when you flew the RV there. Not when
No,
you flew
this was the Worcester, at least the Fairchild.
Very nice.
Chalky.
ZUEAA. That's it.
Anyone know they're still there? John photographs.
That's Tosh's termite.
What's the story there, Derek?
That's Tosh's termite from Newton.
I wonder what year that was.
It lived in a hangar with Hookie Baldwin.
I think there's an article on UDV from 1973 or 74 in the old home built, and I'm pretty sure that's the photo.
More than likely, yes.
Are you saying this picture here is from 1974?
Well, I must say, Derek has really aged very well if it's from 1974.
Yeah, I was in Port Elizabeth at the time, and in fact, it was a year I learned to fly with John English in the Cessna 120.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Keaton and Derek, that must be massively fast with that clip wing design. Nice.
I needed a shoe to get in and out.
Especially with a propeller that goes so fast you can't even see it.
Keaton, how far is that aeroplane? It should be flying shortly.
Yeah, if I could just be locked down in the same place as my airplane, it would have been flying with us during the lockdown. But unfortunately, it's in another province.
Yeah. 2 aeroplanes that
to the creek.
Who's that? Anyone know who that is?
Isn't that right?
I recognize the aeroplane, but not the person.
Interesting with the supper.
Guy, Hal Green?
No, it wasn't Saki, no.
It was not Saki, yeah.
Okay.
No, it wasn't him.
The Sopwith in the background?
That's I'm standing there at the nose of the aeroplane. That's me standing there. Well, that's many years ago.
In those years, there weren't many home builds, and the KL2 was actually one of the, let's say, more popular ones until things came out to quite a much more modern, quicker, easier design. That was pretty much a wooden built home build.
Oh, it's foam and fiberglass and wood spars.
Yeah, but it was the popular home built in the early 70s into 80s.
And designed of a Taylor monoplane. Use the same airfoil.
Next one is Jan Kemp. Move on, Archie. Next. Oh, shame, man.
And that was his Thorpe, huh?
Yeah.
Correct.
Jan Kemp had more crashes than most of us have had breakfast. I think he had 13 actual crashes, not just forced landings. And poor guy was what a guy Jan Kemp was. Good man.
Fantastic man.
Yeah. Whose airplane was this?
It came and it was at one Oshkosh, at one Margate, and I never saw it again.
I believe it lived at Empangeni.
I haven't a clue where it's
built in Cape Town.
I think it was also a Rutan design.
I think it looks like a very vegan.
Yeah,
it's a very vegan. It was built in Cape Town.
Yeah, it was designed by Bert Rutan as well.
But that airplane flew very well, if I recall.
Oh. Billy William.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think whose airplane that was. He's isn't it the professor from PE?
It wasn't Tony.
No, the designer of the
Hevel's one, was it?
That airplane was first flew at Grand Central. Brian Stapleford did its first flight on that airplane. What's his name from
Hevel.
Guy from PE, the lecturer who built the gliders.
Russell Phillips.
Russell, that's Russell's airplane. Russell's building a KR1 now.
It's a Margate shot.
Okay. Yeah. That's Dave Smith's house in the corner there.
The first Margate.
First one.
Yeah.
In the previous picture, you could see the silver falcons in the impalas.
That must have been in the early 80s. Then.
And that was
Could
the
also-
first one, which is 82, 83, something like that.
Could also notice the crowd line those days.
I mean, there wasn't a crowd line. It just used to come and visit.
Yeah,
That was taken by Jane from the Rapide.
Who's that, Roy?
That's Courtney. Courtney and Jane were in the Rapide, and I was flying the Tiger.
Is that Caroline in the back?
Nah, she wasn't in that. I don't think so. Let me have a look. Nah. Okay.
That's Frank and Dave.
Dave Lister.
Yeah. Frankie.
Frankie Dave.
And Dave Lister.
Dave Lister and Frank, yeah. They
Right.
put on a really nice show too.
And you know, Frank owned that beautiful grub called Uniform Yankee. And that was the one that was destroyed when South Africa sort of changed government at Odie Airport, where the guys got in and set fire to the whole hangar. And I remember Frank saying to me, all that was left was the motor lying on the floor.
Ethel, do you remember taking this picture?
I think that was the fire where the stagger wing was destroyed. BBZ.
A whole lot of gliders. It was in the gliding hangar at Odie.
Odie.
Yeah, I think the gliding club moved from there to Brixton.
Uniform Frankie, Ethel.
You're quite right, Uniform Yankee. And I remember...
They were expecting Lucas McGovey.
I remember taking off out of Grand Central with Frank in this aeroplane, and we put about an hour and a half flying time, and we only put 10 minutes on the engine. We flew down the Magaliesberg Ridge soaring and back again. It was fantastic.
So I keep losing thing. Am I here?
Oh, Mike Spence and his son in the background.
And Anthony in the background.
Anthony Spence.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mike Spence.
He lives in Oshkosh now, Anthony.
And for all those who don't know, Mike Spence was the founding member of EAA South Africa.
I think you might find in history that it actually says that Mike Spence and one other were the founding members. If you go back
I think
to
you're
the
probably
late
right,
60s,
Murray.
early 70s.
I think it was Bill Keel.
It was Mike Spence, Woody Woods, and Bill Keel.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. It was all three that founded. They went to Oshkosh in the early days, and they came back with this wonderful idea. And it was Mike, Bill, certainly Bill, and I'm not sure about Woody Woods, but certainly Mike and Bill Keel were instrumental.
Well, I actually wrote his obituary, and I did some research with Anthony, and it was that was through Mike, because we asked him a number of times before he passed away, and that was what he gave us. So Mari's correct. It was the three of them that were. There was also the EAA in South Africa actually started in the 50s, but it was never documented as far as a chapter, which was 322 in 1969.
Woody Woods brought the first bit special.
That is correct, yeah.
He had a chap, Elias Karas, that worked at 3M, that actually worked on putting that thing together. And I think it was ZS USA.
Correct.
Somewhere I've got photos of it.
That's right.
That's my Tiger.
I saw that, yeah.
And next to it, you'll see BBS, which was the Aronka that we rebuilt.
Fly Baby?
No, VP1.
Oh, VP1.
Yeah.
That belongs to Michael Kraus. He's flying it out of Rand at the moment.
Built by Tony van der Heervel.
That's right.
I think it's another one that Brian Stapleton did the first flight.
It's also interesting to see that this is a coronavirus picture because he's wearing a mask.
No, as an inappropriate comment. Thank you.
If you look at the top corner there, that yellow biplane is a HATS biplane. It's owned by Willie van der Walt, if I'm not mistaken.
Neil, can you hear me? It's Edzard here. Michael is building at the moment a model of that VP, a half-scale model, and that should be flying sort of soon if the COVID is done. Should be very nice.
Exceptional. Anyone know what this is?
Tipsy Nipper.
Tipsy Nipper. Hey, sure.
Yeah, that's a Tipsy Nipper, yeah.
Which Jeff Sharman was actually died in one of these.
Correct.
Wing came off at his place of Archiville.
I spoke to his wife, and that's not one.
Birdstrike, wasn't it?
He had one in South Africa, and then when he went to the States, he got another one, but it isn't the one that's from South Africa. He bought the one he died in from the UK.
The one that he had here was sort of a turquoise white Tipsy Nipper, and I was at Baragwanath one day on a charter from Durban, and he said, "Don't you want to fly this thing?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to," and he said, "Get in," and flew it. It was really, really a lovely little airplane to fly.
Oh. That aeroplane is probably the highest out home built in South Africa.
This Dale's one.
Yeah, it's now owned by.
It's owned by Dale de Klerk, I think.
I'm trying
Built
to
by a
think
guy
of
called Toy van Rensburg.
Yeah, it is owned by Dale,
yeah.
and apparently the oldest flying aircraft in the country, according to John.
Yes, it is too. And Toy also built Fluffy's tail at Titch.
It's the oldest home-built flying. The oldest airplane flying is the
the oldest
Ronco
home.
C3 of John Ilsley.
Oh, that's not a Humboldt.
No, no, sure. This is the oldest home-built, and John Ilsley has the oldest flying airplane, which was 1937 at the Ronco C3.
Isn't that a Czechoslovak?
Exactly.
Dale de Klerk owns that now.
Yeah, a Czechoslovak.
That's correct.
But he had a homemade ADF in that airplane, and he used to fly all around South Africa on a homemade ADF. Another. I'm trying to think of the name of the airplane. It's owned by a doctor who lived at Hartbeespoort Dam, and he flew it out of a strip there. And he flew that
Barracuda.
Is that a Barracuda?
It's a Barracuda, yeah.
Yes, Barracuda. But it looks familiar, that airplane. Anybody knows history?
What is that, Derek? Can you remember?
I'm trying to think where it came from.
No, it's taken at Margate, I think.
That was the June turbulent from Maritzburg, if I remember.
And it's just been bought, and it's moving from Springs to Rand over the next little bit.
Yeah, it's blue and white now, I think. Eh?
Yeah, that's right.
It was out at forget the name of the strip. The strip out beyond Kitty Hawk.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's just been recently bought, and the guy's got it up and running again.
Oh, well, Brian.
Zeeburger.
And I pen a smile.
Sorry, go back to Brian Zederberg, please. Neil, if you can, go back to Brian Zederberg.
Back there.
Thank you, Neil. In the early days of Margate, Brian Zederberg was, of course, the show director. He was everything. He was the big boss, actually. And he was one of the most wonderful people you could ever meet in your life. And I will never forget how many airplanes he actually flew. And I did a talk with him because one of his airplanes that was there at Margate had a flat wheel. And I said to him, Brian, you've got a flat wheel. And he said, yes, but it's round on the top.
It's only flat on the bottom.
Yeah, it was only flat on the bottom. But what an incredible man. And I think when we do this again, and I'd love to do this again, maybe we can hook up with Brian, because he's now in Australia, and hook up and get some of his memories. Because what a man. I mean, the smile there on the screen now tells you everything about this wonderful man.
I was thinking of inviting him here, but it's like 3 o'clock in the morning where he is.
I know, but you know what, Neil? We discussed this earlier today. We can do it. We can, you know, he will be happy to do it, I'm sure.
So, yeah.
That's the airplane that ended up in the sea at Margate.
Which one? This one, Derek. UFH.
No, the other one. Go back one.
The EAA biplane, the yellow one.
No, it ended up in the sea.
People after this, Sam.
I think it was that one. Or was it UDH? Or no, sorry, it was UDH, which was.
It was in Ronka, wasn't it? That landed up in the sea.
It might come up just now. It was one that Jimmy Popham owned. I'll think of its name in a moment. But he ended up in the sea. There were photos the other day of it being dragged out of the sea at Margate, off the beach.
Vanachafani.
Afani, yeah.
Hmm.
What airplane was that one before this?
Which one? This one?
Yeah, no, the one back.
That's a EAA biplane, isn't it?
No. This one. No, that's an EAA biplane.
I'm sure
the
it
next
was.
one.
That's EAA biplane, correct.
The next one. The next one. Forward. That one.
I don't know what that was.
The Luton Beta before it was red.
So.
Yeah, it's one of the Luton Betas at Pietermaritzburg, Orabi.
Okay.
I don't think so. Could be.
UFH, if someone can Google that sometime.
Vanachafani.
Vanachafani, yeah. It was getting the my Pietenpaal ready for its first flight. Victor Juliet
Where was
Alpha.
that?
That was at Barra. Yeah.
But you had it
Stuart
at
Wood.
You had it at Grand Central.
Yeah, but we first flew it at Barra.
Okay.
And that was Stuart Wood and then Dieter Ebling there as well. Richard Bickel flew it first time.
Yeah, because I flew that one a few times.
Yes, yeah, you flew it often, yeah. Hey, the man.
Where would that have been?
I don't know. John sent in this photograph. Any ideas, John? May have been Bruce Perkins'
something on
photograph.
my iPhone, yeah, I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, you can see. I think that's a mine dump in the background.
Oh, that was one that Woody Woods built had that built by the school. I think it was a school in Cape Town built it.
Okay. Is this the one Bill Keel was flying? It took off from Grand Central and the prop came off or something. Landed in a fruit orchard.
Could well have been, but it was repaired and I think went to the Eastern Cape.
Okay.
But Woody Woods gave that kit to a school, and they built it.
Okay.
Brian Stapleford flew it from Cape Town up to the EAA meeting in the Free State. What was the name of that dam that they had?
Allemanskraal.
No,
Yeah.
Potchefstroom.
No, not Potch. No.
Allemanskraal, wasn't it?
Allemanskraal. And Brian Stapleford flew from Cape Town to Allemanskraal for that EAA meeting. EAA.
That's Neil de Blanche flying. Didn't it belong to him?
Step Poppendorf didn't build that airplane.
I think it was built by a school teacher, Derek.
No, Neil de Blanche built that himself. And he won, it made a concours d'elegance on one of our conventions. And our Neil has been one of the most active out of Gauteng participants in EAA events. Wonderful guy, really nice. And his house was burned down at the airfield. Shame.
Sorry, I'm wrong. It wasn't the aeroplane that came from that Woody Woods gave, but identical aeroplane. Woody Woods gave a kit.
Sorry, Neil built an RV4.
I was just going to say, Carl, this was built by a school teacher. I think Derek's quite nearly correct there. Neil will be able to tell you the story.
But there was more than one of them built at the time. It was very much the in-home built to build at the time.
This sonnet belonged to me at the stage. Before that, it was Steph Papendorf. And Neil de Blanche took it over from me afterwards and rebuilt it to this state.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Steph had an oil line burst on him, and his windscreen and this thing was covered in oil. And he had to land it at Wonderboom. He landed across the runway. He couldn't see a thing what was happening.
Yeah, from there it went to Bully Andre down in East London, and I bought it from Bully Andre.
Okay.
Is it still around?
Yeah, it's down in Bethlehem, I believe. No, it wasn't Bethlehem, and now it's down in Saldanha Bay, and the guy has put a Rotex 912 motor in it.
Oh, wonderful.
It hasn't flown since then. I don't know what's happening with it now.
Cool, and that's it, guys.
Very nice.
Did we get, sorry, Neil, did we get a proposal and seconded for the financials?
Yeah, Carl proposed and I seconded.
Okay, great, sorry.
Okay.
Neil?
Yeah?
Can I recommend that we do this again? Because it's such a good idea and it worked out so successfully tonight. It was amazing, in fact. But let's get some of the legendary stories about Oscar. Not Oscar, about Margate.
Yeah. No, we can,
Okay.
yeah. We can work on that for a future.
The time that, what was his name? We got him to fly an aeroplane.
Mike Skitter.
Mike Skitter, yes. Let's do that story. And then when I fell out the airplane, remember Russell Mackenzie was flying my 172 and Martin van Straten was the pilot in his Yak 55, I think it was, doing the aerial photography, and I built this dummy, and we'll talk about that one, and we threw it out the bloody airplane. And, and there's so many wonderful other stories that we could probably all relate. So let's sort of, I think we've started on something very good, Neil. It's a great idea, and hell, from the comfort of your own home. And I want to say to everybody, well done. And a particular shout out while I'm talking to Rob Yonkers and the CASA team, who've done everything in their power to get us back in the sky. Congratulations to everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well done, Rob, and well done everyone who participated there. And I think that's we're done for the evening.
One more thing, sorry, Neil. In the events, I don't think we chatted about the talk show that we're going to do through Zoom. We've managed to get Hugh Pryor. He's going to connect with us from the UK. And Mike Brown is going to interview him on Thursday, the 18th of June. We will send out a notice in the next week or two to all our members.
Fantastic. Thanks, Maureen. Yeah, we'll definitely put that in our diaries.
Hello,
Okay.
Neil.
Sorry, what is that? I've got a blank screen here in front of me. Yeah.
Hello, Neil. It's Gary from.
Oh, Gary. Hi, Gary. Gary, all the way from Tampa in Florida.
Yeah, I don't know if you could see the video or not. Could you unmute
I don't know what's
the
going
video?
on with my screen here, but I've got there we go. Maybe Gary. I've just got your name. That's all.
Okay, there it is. Yeah.
There we go.
The collector's hat from this year's Air Venture.
This year venture that didn't happen.
That's right. I hope it's a collector's item. Well, I wanted to wish you and everyone there all the best. And it was wonderful sitting in on your meeting. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you for joining us. Gary's from just Saratoga, I think it is, just south of Tampa, and flies a wonderful plane. What is the plane called, Gary? The
Varga Kachina.
That's right, a little two-seat trainer out of a beautiful grass runway, and it's flying paradise where he is. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for joining us.
And Gary, sorry we're not going to see you in Oshkosh this year. It would have been my 20th trip in a row and Neil's 24th, I think. Am I right, Neil?
Correct, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my, yeah.
That's
Well, I was one of those people who has made almost every one from the very beginning, and I miss it dearly.
Yeah, sorry we're not going to see you there, Gary, but we'll see you next year for sure.
Next year.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, thank you. Okay, guys.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Maureen.
Thanks, Neil.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you all the next one, 1st of July. Okay.
Thanks, Neil. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Neil. Very well done. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Neil. Cheers.
Thanks, Neil. Ciao for now.